Hey y'all, welcome to Sandy's Library. I'm Sandy, and in this video we're going to continue to talk about those mystical abilities that some of my ancestors were gifted with. These are my old family tales about my grandmother's people. If you need visuals, there are links posted in the description outlining both of my grandparents' family trees. Okay, so in the last video we talked a lot about some of the miraculous things that Willie and his mother-in-law, Belle Hawkins Fuller, could do. I mean, we've got levitating furniture, stopping blood from pouring from a wound, making scissors walk across tables, and removing warts from people, and all by chanting. And according to the Thornells, the only means of identity for the tellers of this story, Willie's wart-removing ability wasn't confined to just people. I wish that our half-cousin would have clarified which Thornells he's talking about, but again, here we are. Nevertheless, as the story goes, they had this mule that had a big wart near the shoulder of his leg, and it caused the mule some discomfort when he walked. So the Thornells, knowing that Willie could remove warts from people, decided they'd give it a shot and asked Willie to remove the wart from their mule. Willie agreed to try, even though he'd never tried to remove a wart from an animal before. So he was quick to acknowledge that he didn't know if it would work or not. But to everyone's astonishment, including Willie's, within a few days the mule's wart was gone. It's also said that Willie and his mother-in-law, Belle Hawkins Fuller, could heal burns. One such story that our half-cousin notes in his manuscript about such an event, of course, was told to him by Aunt Allie. Luckily, I have heard this story before, so I'm going to be able to tell you the story without making you sit through a lesson in how syrup is made, which is what our half-cousin did. But anyway, my great-grandpa Willie was known to have preferred the lighter texture and color of ribbon cane syrup as opposed to the thicker, darker blackstrap syrup. And every year, in late fall, once Willie had harvested his sugarcane crop, he'd take it over to his brother-in-law's, John Fuller, who helped him process the cane into syrup. So, as the story goes, on this day, Allie, Willie's daughter, had gone over to the Fullers with him to visit her cousin Leela. So, it was Leela's job to stir the boiling mixture and skim off any foam, and as usual, John Fuller warns his daughter not to splash the hot liquid on herself. But, like in all good tales, Leela becomes distracted by her cousin Allie, and the next thing you know, Leela's hand is in that scalding syrup. And we all know this wouldn't be half as much fun if I didn't make fun of my half-cousin's storytelling disabilities. I mean, for real. He says, Leela was immediately in unbearable pain. She cried, "What in the world am I going to do? I just can't stand it." Well, Leela must have had a damned high tolerance to pain, y'all. And I'm also guessing that our half-cousin heard this tale from none other than Aunt Allie. I mean, really. I've been in unbearable pain before, and y'all, I could barely utter the words, "help me," much less construct complete sentences. But anyway, John sends Leela into the house to get her mother Gertrude to put some ointment on her hand. And just as a quick FYI, Gertrude was my grandfather's sister. So anyway, Allie says to Uncle John, Papa can take the fire out. let's go get him. Apparently, Willie was up the hill from where they were cooking the syrup. But anyway, Willie returns with Allie to find that John got Leela soaking her hand in a bucket of water. So, Willie says, "Come here, Leela, and let me see your hand." Allie says, Leela holds her hand out and asks, "You really can't take the fire out, can you?" To which Willie replies, "You better believe I can if you want the pain to stop." And y'all, I really want to know when this happened. Were Allie and Leela children? Or was she just trying to make Leela sound retarded? I mean, really. Remember what I said, y'all? I could barely utter the words "help me" when I was in unbearable pain. But, nevertheless, Leela is able to basically carry on a conversation with Willie where she asks him to take away her pain. So anyway, as the story goes, Willie takes Leela's burned hand and lightly passes his own hand over it while mumbling and blowing on it all the while. When he was done, Willie said, "Now, go on about your business. Sponge off the syrup with some water. It will blister, but it won't be sore or hurt you again." And then our half-cousin wraps up this story with all the pain left of Leela's burn, and it wasn't even sore, leaving only a clear blister. So, what do I think about this story? I think it's a load of shit. I don't believe that Leela's hand was in syrup, as Aunt Allie claimed. It's more like some of it splashed out onto her hand. And one thing that both Aunt Allie and our half-cousin could have benefited from was a good dictionary so they could look up the word unbearable. And yep, I am aware that I am nitpicking. But anyway, just when I think things can't take a turn for the worse, I run across this little gem tucked away in our half-cousin's manuscript. And I'm going to read it to you as he wrote it. He says, "There is an unusual and interesting fact about Willie. It's said that he possessed some strange abilities or powers. They may have been known as priestcraft. He was a member of the RLDS church and the priesthood. These mystic abilities included stopping blood, removing warts, and taking the pain away from a burn. Willie was able to stop bleeding, and he shared this talent with Grandma Fuller. It may have been Grandma who taught him these mysterious cures." Okay, so if Grandma Fuller taught him these abilities, then it wasn't priestcraft, now was it? Grandma Fuller certainly wasn't a priest in the RLDS church. Women weren't allowed in the priesthood. And secondly, I have never heard the words priestcraft and the RLDS church mentioned in the same sentence. Now, that said, after reading about the religion wars, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if multiple members of the church back then weren't practicing their magic and calling it priestcraft as a means to try to justify the righteousness of it all. And it's pretty funny, y'all, that our half-cousin tries to cite old American folklore about supernatural abilities and how Christians eventually evolved the folklore to suit their religion, thereby claiming it was an ability from God. But when our half-cousin figured out that Willie didn't fit the profile of the seventh son legend, he simply supposed that Willie had been born with an extra caul, which is basically the amniotic membrane that encases the fetus during pregnancy. And how in the hell would he know that? And y'all, I have never, ever heard my grandmother or her siblings suggesting such a thing. Honestly, y'all, this sheds a whole new light on the religion wars for me. So now, when I contemplate all the animosity between the Baptists and the Saints, and how the Baptist mob had treated the preacher, J.W. Jackson, I gotta wonder. I mean, William Bell Fuller had a history of practicing what some might have referred to in those days as witchcraft. Hey, when 300 pounds of men can sit on a table and Bell still manages to make it levitate, well, I can see how some people might have called her a witch. Plus, she was a scary character anyway. He was known for whipping her husband when he got out of line. I mean, I wonder how many of those saints could also levitate and perform these miraculous healings, such as stopping bleeding, making warts disappear, healing severe burns, and all by chanting. Look, there has to be a reason beyond religion for the animosity that seemed to follow the saints wherever they went. And y'all, I thought we left religious persecution behind when we fled England. That's where the majority of my mother's people came from. So, what was the deal with the saints? The people in this particular group did not practice polygamy like Brigham Young did. So that wasn't it. What was it that made everyone in multiple communities develop such a deep-seated hatred for the RLDS folks? The only thing that makes sense to me, y'all, is the Baptists were scared of that damn chanting and levitating shit that at least Bell and Willie were doing. My feelings are, though, that probably more than just Willie and Bell were demonstrating these particular gifts, which may well be why the Baptist mob went after the whole bunch instead of just the preacher. And while we're on this subject, remember the sick children who were almost caught in the crossfire because they were going to administer to them after the service? Well, I have to wonder, why didn't they just chant to make children well? I mean, at the very least, Bell and Willie were known to have chanted for other health issues. Why not that? I mean, I told y'all that I feel like there was something cut out of the doctrine after the mob attack on J.W. Jackson. I'm starting to wonder if it had something to do with witchcraft and chanting. And personally, y'all, I feel like our half-cousin was trying to justify their use of witchcraft by suggesting that it wasn't really witchcraft. It was called priestcraft, which is totally different. They only did that for good. And y'all, if you're not sure, yes, I'm being sarcastic. Our half-cousin even throws out some verses that Willie could have possibly used, and I'm not going to bother repeating them here, as our half-cousin later admits in his manuscript that Willie died without passing his secrets along to anyone, and that he didn't actually know what the words were that Willie used in his chants. So anyway, our half-cousin says priestcraft, I say witchcraft, whatever helped him sleep at night, but he got that idea from somewhere, and we all know where that was. Aunt Allie. And I think we all know by now to take anything she says with a grain of salt. And in light of that, I feel like this is a good place to stop this video, but don't worry, we'll be right back to continue this discussion. So, until next time, later, Gators.